Mike, Sarah, and Jack were no strangers to adventure. As ardent mountain climbers, they shared a bond forged through countless ascents and the thrill of conquering new peaks. Each expedition brought them closer, their spirits intertwined in the grandeur of the great outdoors. The trio had journeyed to the city of Mount Shasta, California, on a mission both exhilarating and daunting. Their goal was to ascend the formidable Mount Shasta, the 10th mountain on their list, and celebrate this monumental achievement. But, as they soon discovered, this journey was about to be unlike any other. The city of Mount Shasta welcomed them with open arms, yet it harbored whispers, secrets, and a pervasive sense of unease. Locals with wary eyes cautioned them about the mountain they were about to face. It was no ordinary mountain, they said. It held a power beyond the comprehension of those who dared to challenge it. Gathered in a cozy hotel in the heart of the city, Mike, Sarah, and Jack sensed the tension in the air. Their fellow lodgers spoke in hushed tones, sharing eerie tales of those who had ventured up Mount Shasta, never to return. Stories of inexplicable disappearances, spectral apparitions, and unnerving sounds haunted the quiet night. The warning signs were clear. The residents believed that the mountain was an enigma, a place that could swallow those who dared to defy it. But Mike, Sarah, and Jack were no strangers to adversity. They had faced treacherous terrains, unpredictable weather, and the sheer cliffs of nature's grandeur before. With hearts ablaze with determination, they laughed off the superstitious tales, dismissing them as the fears of the ignorant. "Nothing can deter us," Mike declared, his eyes alight with the fire of adventurer. "We've conquered 9 peaks, and this will be no different." Sarah nodded in agreement, her adventurous spirit as strong as her husband's. "We've faced challenges before, and we've always come through stronger. We'll do the same this time." Jack, the ever-optimistic friend, chimed in with a grin. "Exactly. Let's not let superstition keep us from our dreams." With their resolve unshaken, they retired to their rooms, ready to embark on their quest with the first light of dawn. The strange tales of Mount Shasta echoed in their ears, but their hearts were set on the summit, for it was the promise of adventure and the unknown that fueled their passion. Unbeknownst to them, the mountain held mysteries that no amount of experience could prepare them for, and their journey was destined to be a terrifying exploration into the depths of fear and the unknown. As the first rays of dawn kissed the city of Mount Shasta, Mike, Sarah, and Jack awoke with a sense of purpose that overrode the ominous warnings that had greeted them the previous night. The treacherous tales of the mountain's dark power were like whispers carried away by the morning breeze. Over a hearty breakfast in the hotel's cozy dining room, they shared laughter and camaraderie. The locals' superstitions seemed a distant memory as they mapped out the first leg of their journey. "I can't believe we're finally here," Sarah said, her eyes shining with anticipation. "We've dreamt about this ascent for years." Mike, the leader of the group, nodded with a determined smile. "This is our 10th mountain, the pinnacle of our adventures. We're going to conquer Mount Shasta no matter what." Jack's enthusiasm was contagious, and he chimed in with fervor. "That's the spirit. We'll face the challenges head-on and come back with an epic tale to tell." With their backpacks packed and hiking gear in hand, they left the hotel and headed for the base of Mount Shasta. The mountain's massive presence loomed in the distance, its peak obscured by wisps of clouds. The trio shared a moment of quiet awe before starting their ascent. At the base, they secured their backpacks, tightened their hiking boots, and took the first steps towards their extraordinary adventure. The trail ahead was well marked, a promising path to the summit. The air was crisp and invigorating, and the beauty of the surrounding wilderness was captivating. As they ventured deeper into the mountain's embrace, the trio could not shake the warnings they had received the previous night. Still, their determination to reach the summit was unwavering, a testament to their shared passion and the bond they had cultivated over the years. The path grew steeper and more challenging, but the climbers were undeterred. They faced each obstacle with determination, pushing forward and supporting one another along the way. Their laughter echoed through the forest, mingling with the rustling leaves and the distant call of birds. The day wore on, and as the sun began its descent, they reached their first campsite. The sight of the towering pines and the tranquil stream nearby filled them with a sense of accomplishment. They had made it through the first leg of their journey, proving that they were more than capable of tackling Mount Shasta. As they set up their tents and prepared for the night, the memory of the strange sounds and warnings from the locals began to recede into the background. The allure of the mountain's challenge and the thrill of adventure were all-consuming. Under the canopy of stars, they gathered around a crackling campfire, sharing stories of their past climbs and the dreams that had brought them here. The haunting tales of the mountain seemed like nothing more than a distant memory, lost in the beauty of the wilderness that surrounded them. Little did they know that the night would bring eerie sounds, mysterious whispers, and a growing sense of unease that would test their determination and bond. The ominous power of Mount Shasta was stirring, and their adventure was about to take an unsettling turn. The first campsite, nestled within the embrace of Mount Shasta, was a tranquil clearing, surrounded by tall pine trees that reached for the star-studded sky. The trio of climbers, Mike, Sarah, and Jack, had successfully completed the initial leg of their journey. With a sense of camaraderie, they marveled at the breathtaking beauty of the natural world around them. Sitting by the campfire, its crackling flames casting flickering shadows, the climbers shared stories and laughter. This was their sanctuary, a temporary haven, nestled within the mysterious mountain. Despite the ominous tales that had shrouded Mount Shasta, their shared passion for adventure and each other's company created an unshakable bond. As the night deepened, their conversation mellowed, and they prepared to retire to their tents. The forest seemed to hold its breath, enveloping them in a profound silence. The stars glistened above, and the moon bathed the campsite in its gentle, silvery glow. But then, as the darkness of the night deepened, a haunting presence crept into their surroundings. Mysterious sounds, unlike anything they had ever heard, began to echo through the forest. The eerie calls and unidentifiable whispers sent shivers down their spines. Mike exchanged an uneasy glance with Sarah, who sat beside him, their eyes reflecting the growing unease. Jack, who had been stoking the campfire, felt the unsettling vibrations in the air and paused, a furrow forming on his brow. The sounds seemed to penetrate their very beings, like an otherworldly melody that was neither soothing nor comprehensible. The whispers brushed against their ears, and it felt as if they were trying to worm their way into their minds, sowing seeds of fear and doubt. "What is that?" Jack finally asked, his voice trembling. Mike shook his head, unable to provide an answer. The camaraderie that had enveloped them throughout the day was now replaced by a chilling uncertainty. They were experienced climbers, but this was unlike anything they had ever encountered. As the haunting sounds continued, Jack couldn't bear the tension any longer. He unzipped the tent's flap and stepped outside, his flashlight in hand. The forest beyond was eerily silent, as if holding its breath, and the source of the sounds remained elusive. Sarah followed Jack, concern etched on her face. They searched the area around the camp, shining their lights into the darkness, but found nothing that could explain the eerie sounds. The forest offered no answers, and the unsettling ambience only grew stronger. Mike, left alone in the tent, felt a growing sense of unease. He listened to the hushed conversation between Jack and Sarah, and pondered the enigma that surrounded them. The camaraderie that had carried them this far was now strained by fear and doubt. The trio reconvened by the campfire, their expressions etched with uncertainty. "I don't understand," Sarah whispered. "What is happening here?" Mike shook his head, his thoughts mirroring those of his companions. "I've never heard anything like this in all our climbs. It's like the mountain itself is trying to speak to us." The night wore on, and the eerie sounds persisted, wrapping them in a cloak of discomfort. In their tents, they tried to find solace in sleep, but their minds were plagued by the unsettling noises that refused to fade. The first night on Mount Shasta was a journey into the unknown. a stark departure from the camaraderie and laughter that had marked their ascent earlier. The mysterious mountain had begun to unveil its secrets, and the climbers were left to wonder if they had underestimated the true nature of the power it held over them. The following morning dawned with a sense of trepidation in the camp. The eerie sounds of the night had left their mark on the climbers, casting a shadow of doubt over their once unwavering determination. Mike, Sarah, and Jack gathered around the campfire, their faces etched with concern, trying to make sense of the unsettling events that had unfolded. As they huddled together, their breath visible in the chilly mountain air, a figure suddenly appeared on the outskirts of their camp. A man, appearing to be around 60 years old, stood there, his demeanor both athletic and peculiar. He bore strange devices, resembling a cross between a locator and unfamiliar instruments that baffled the climbers. Mike was the first to notice the stranger, and he couldn't help but be intrigued. With a hint of apprehension, he called out to the man, "Hey there! Are you a fellow hiker?" The man's piercing gaze met Mike's, and it sent a chill down his spine. His features were weathered, and he wore an expression that seemed to carry the weight of untold mysteries. Most striking of all, a curious scar adorned his temple, a peculiar mark etched into his skin. As if caught in a trance, Jack added, "How much farther to the summit?" But instead of offering a direct answer, the man's voice was laden with cryptic warnings. "You will not reach the summit," he stated, his words carrying an air of solemnity. "You should turn back." Sarah, feeling a growing sense of unease, probed further. "Why do you say that?" "We've come this far, and we won't be deterred." However, the man remained unmoved, as if he held knowledge that they could not comprehend. With a quiet intensity, he added, "The mountain holds power beyond your understanding. Its secrets are best left undiscovered. Turn back while you still can." The group exchanged uneasy glances, the man's ominous words taking root in their minds. The camaraderie that had once bound them was now strained, the weight of doubt pressing down on their shoulders. "What secrets?" Mike asked, his voice revealing a mixture of curiosity and fear. But the enigmatic man turned and swiftly walked away, leaving the climbers with a lingering sense of unease. His departure was as enigmatic as his arrival, and the group was left to grapple with the cryptic warning he had delivered. They attempted to reason with one another, but the encounter had cast a pall over their camp. The presence of the strange man with his unsettling devices and the ominous scar on his temple had shaken their resolve. The mountain seemed to be asserting its dominance in ways they had never imagined. With the man's warning echoing in their thoughts, the group faced a crossroads. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and they grappled with the question of whether to continue their ascent or heed the stranger's caution. In the wake of their encounter, their once unwavering determination had wavered, and the ominous power of Mount Shasta seemed to be closing in around them, a silent force that threatened to consume their adventure. The mysterious encounter with the enigmatic man had left the trio of climbers with a web of questions and doubts. Their resolve had been tested, and their campsite felt like an island of vulnerability amidst the mountain's looming mysteries. Mike, Sarah, and Jack gathered around the campfire once more, their faces etched with the weight of uncertainty. The unsettling sounds of the previous night still resonated in their minds, and the stranger's cryptic warning had added to their sense of unease. "We can't let fear hold us back," Mike declared, his voice filled with determination. "We've come this far, and we've faced countless challenges before." Sarah nodded in agreement, her fiery spirit undiminished. "This is our 10th anniversary climb. It's a celebration of everything we've achieved together. We can't turn back now." Jack chimed in with his characteristic optimism. "Exactly. We've overcome adversity in the past. Let's not allow this encounter to deter us. We'll press on and conquer Mount Shasta." The decision was made, and they were united in their determination to continue their climb, no matter the ominous warnings or the eerie occurrences. Celebrating their 10th anniversary on the summit of Mount Shasta had become more than just a goal. It was a testament to their unwavering bond and their resilience in the face of the unknown. With renewed determination, they packed up their campsite and prepared to ascend further into the heart of the mountain. The path ahead was challenging, and the weight of uncertainty hung in the air, but they took each step with a steadfast resolve. As they moved higher, the landscape transformed into a pristine, untamed wilderness. The trees grew sparser, and the air thinned as they ventured closer to the summit. The climb was physically demanding, and the mountain seemed to conspire to slow their progress. They encountered unpredictable weather, fierce winds, and steep ascents, but their shared commitment drove them forward. With each passing hour, they began to notice strange symbols, etched into the rocks along the path, symbols that they had never seen before. The mountain itself seemed to be inscribed with a language they couldn't comprehend. The unease lingered, but their determination to reach the summit remained unwavering. Then, amidst the jagged rocks and distant peaks, they stumbled upon something that made their hearts race. A peculiar rock, glistening in the sunlight like a jewel, lay partly buried in the ground. Its unearthly beauty was undeniable, but it radiated an aura of otherworldly power. The sight of the shimmering rock sent shivers down their spines, and their excitement quickly turned to fear. It was as if the mountain was offering a cryptic message, one that was impossible to decipher. The strange symbols and the mysterious rock seemed to be part of an enigma that they couldn't unravel. With the mountain's eerie secrets lurking around them, they quickened their pace, eager to escape the unsettling presence that seemed to permeate the very stones beneath their feet. They were resolved to reach the summit and celebrate their 10th anniversary, but the unknown dangers that lay ahead weighed heavily on their minds. As the day wore on, they climbed higher, their muscles straining and their breaths growing labored. The mountain's challenges were relentless, but so was their determination. Their journey into the heart of Mount Shasta was a testament to their unyielding spirit, a spirit that was now driven by both their dreams and their growing fear of the unknown. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fiery red and burnt orange, Mike, Sarah, and Jack realized that it was time to set up camp for the night. Their bodies were exhausted from the demanding ascent, and the challenges the mountain had thrown their way had taken a toll on their spirits. They scouted for a suitable spot and found a small gorge that appeared to provide some shelter from the elements. The prospect of a peaceful night's rest brought a glimmer of hope, and they set to work pitching their tents. The sense of camaraderie they had once shared now felt like a lifeline in the face of the mountain's growing mysteries. By evening, they had settled into their tents, their exhaustion overshadowed by the allure of a good night's sleep. The mountain's eerie secrets seemed to have taken a back seat to their physical needs, and for a moment they felt a semblance of security. But the night held a sinister surprise that none of them had anticipated. As darkness descended and the camp fell into a hushed stillness, the unsettling sounds that had plagued them in previous nights returned with a vengeance. The eerie whispers, the ghostly cries, and the mysterious vibrations in the air intensified, assaulting their senses. Jack, whose tent was closest to the source of the unsettling sounds, could feel the disconcerting vibrations through the ground beneath him. He unzipped his tent and stepped outside, his flashlight trembling in his hand as he scanned the darkness. The forest around them was alive with an unseen force, and the night held an air of supernatural dread. Sarah and Mike, stirred from their sleep by Jack's movements, joined him outside, their faces etched with concern. The eerie sounds seemed to penetrate their very souls, sending shivers down their spines. In the darkness, they huddled together, trying to make sense of the otherworldly cacophony. The mountain had become a chamber of inexplicable horrors, and their decision to camp for the night had become a source of torment. Sarah's voice quivered as she spoke, her words barely audible over the chilling sounds. "What is happening? This can't be natural." Mike's jaw clenched as he struggled to find an explanation. "I don't know, but we can't stay here. We have to find the source of these sounds." They agreed to leave their tents behind and explore the area in hopes of uncovering the cause of the mysterious disturbances. Their flashlight beams pierced the darkness as they moved cautiously, fear gnawing at the edges of their minds. As they ventured further from the camp, they came upon a sight that defied all reason. A luminous light, brighter than the moon, hovered in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The object was unlike anything they had ever seen before, and it pulsed with a hypnotic rhythm. The climbers watched in awe and terror as the enigmatic object hung in the night sky, illuminating the surrounding forest with an otherworldly radiance. The eerie sound seemed to emanate from the object, as if it were orchestrating the symphony of fear that had enveloped them. They couldn't tear their eyes away from the spectacle, even as their hearts raced and their minds struggled to comprehend the surreal encounter. It was as if the mountain had become a portal to another realm, and they were trapped in its otherworldly grasp. The night of terror had descended upon them, and their decision to camp for the night had led them into a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. The mountain's power was no longer an enigma. It was a palpable force that had seized their very souls, leaving them in a state of paralyzing fear. The sight of the luminous object in the night sky had left Mike, Sarah, and Jack in a state of shock. The eerie sounds that surrounded them seemed to emanate from this enigmatic source, and their fear was intensified by the surreal nature of the encounter. As the climbers stood gazing up at the unearthly object, they felt a compulsion to document the phenomenon. Sarah reached for her phone, determined to capture evidence of the strange occurrence. But as soon as she aimed her phone at the glowing object and took a photograph, an eerie transformation occurred. The luminous object reacted to the flash, its pulsating rhythm intensifying to a deafening crescendo. The night sky itself seemed to convulse in response. The air crackled with energy, and the climbers felt a profound sense of foreboding. A sudden violent storm erupted, with winds howling and rain lashing at them, threatening to tear their very souls from their bodies. Blinded by the storm, the climbers struggled to find each other. The tempest raged around them, and it felt as though the very elements of nature had been unleashed in fury. Their senses were overwhelmed, and the tumultuous winds and blinding rain made it impossible to communicate or move. After what felt like an eternity, the storm subsided as abruptly as it had begun, leaving behind an eerie calm. As the rain ceased and the wind settled, Mike and Sarah found themselves standing amidst the wreckage of their camp. Their tents were shredded, their belongings scattered, and their sense of disorientation was palpable. Panic surged through them as they realized that Jack was nowhere to be seen. They searched frantically for their friend, calling his name into the desolate night. But all they discovered was Jack's jacket, abandoned near the remnants of their camp, a haunting reminder of his sudden disappearance. Sarah's voice quivered as she choked out Jack's name, her eyes scanning the chaotic scene. "Jack, where are you? This can't be happening." Mike's heart was heavy with dread, and he gripped Sarah's hand, their shared terror mirroring each other's. "We need to find him. He can't just be gone." Their search for Jack was met with an eerie silence that was punctuated only by the remnants of the storm. It was as if the mountain itself had swallowed their friend, leaving no trace of his presence. Their efforts to call for help, using their dwindling phone battery, proved fruitless. It was as if they were isolated in a dimension where communication had ceased to exist. The climbers were now trapped in the midst of the mountain's enigmatic power, facing a nightmarish ordeal that had robbed them of their friend and their sense of security. They were left to ponder the terrifying realization that the object they had witnessed might be the key to their friend's inexplicable disappearance. The mountain had revealed a malevolent side that was beyond their understanding, and their world had shifted into a realm of nightmarish uncertainty. As the first light of dawn began to pierce the shadowy veil of Mount Shasta, Mike and Sarah found themselves caught in a frantic whirlwind of emotion. Their friend, Jack, had vanished without a trace in the aftermath of the otherworldly storm that had ravaged their campsite. The once unstoppable trio of climbers was now reduced to a desperate duo, determined to unravel the mystery surrounding their friend's disappearance. With heavy hearts and a sense of urgency, they initiated a thorough search of the area. Their calls for Jack echoed through the forest, their voices laced with fear and desperation. Each step felt heavier, each moment without any sign of their friend, deepened their dread. The eerie symbols on the rocks and the unearthly aura of the mountain only added to the enigma that seemed to surround them. As they scoured the landscape for any clue, a growing sense of futility crept into their hearts. It was as if the mountain had swallowed Jack whole, erasing all evidence of his presence. Exhausted and disheartened, they faced the grim reality that they could not continue the search alone. With heavy hearts, they decided to descend the mountain and return to the city of Mount Shasta, seeking help and answers. The journey back to civilization was arduous, their hearts weighed down by the uncertainty of their friend's fate. The mountain's mysteries seemed to encircle them, as if they were inextricably bound to its enigmatic power. Finally, they arrived back in the city of Mount Shasta, their faces bearing the marks of their harrowing ordeal. They made their way to a local bar, seeking solace in a familiar place. It was there that they encountered an unexpected sight that would send shivers down their spines. Seated in the corner of the bar was Jack, his presence both reassuring and unnerving. He was huddled in his jacket, shivering from the cold, and his eyes held a haunted, distant look. He looked different, as if he had experienced something that had forever changed him. As soon as Mike and Sarah saw their friend, relief flooded over them. They rushed over to him, their voices filled with emotion. "Jack, we thought we'd lost you. What happened up there?" But instead of providing answers, Jack hesitated. His eyes darted around the bar as if he were afraid of being overheard. He leaned in closer to his friends, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can't talk here. We need to go somewhere private. I have to tell you what happened, Ed, but it's not safe here." Their curiosity mixed with concern, and they followed Jack to a more secluded spot. As the three friends huddled together, the gravity of Jack's revelation began to unfold. Jack confessed that he had been taken by the same enigmatic forces they had encountered on the mountain. He described strange creatures, tall and otherworldly, with cone-shaped heads and clawed hands, who had surrounded him and left him in a state of paralysis. He spoke of being transported to an alien place, a realm that defied all human understanding. He described their intentions as mysterious and terrifying, and he feared that he had become a subject of experimentation in the hands of these extraterrestrial beings. The disclosure sent shockwaves through Mike and Sarah. It was a revelation that defied all reason, a story of alien intrusion that was beyond the scope of their wildest imagination. As they listened to Jack's tale, their world was transformed into a nightmarish reality. The mountain's power, once an enigma, was now a malevolent force that had ensnared their friend and subjected him to unspeakable horrors. The search for answers had led them into a world of terror, where the unknown was more horrifying than they could have ever imagined. Jack, their missing friend, held the key to the mountain's secrets, and the climbers were faced with a choice: confront the terrifying truth, or descend into a nightmare from which they might never awaken. The bar was filled with an eerie silence as Jack's chilling revelation hung in the air. The climbers, Mike and Sarah, exchanged incredulous glances, struggling to digest the unbelievable tale their friend had just shared. "We can't believe this, Jack," Mike finally said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You're saying that you were abducted by aliens?" Jack nodded, his gaze haunted. "I know how it sounds, but I can't explain it any other way. I was taken to a place that defies all human comprehension. These creatures, they were unlike anything I've ever seen." Sarah leaned in closer, her voice filled with concern. "Jack, are you sure you're okay? It could be shock or some sort of hallucination." Jack's eyes, however, held a clarity that defied any doubts. "I wish it were that simple, but it was real, and there's something more you need to know." As the group delved deeper into Jack's account, the weight of the unknown loomed over them. They couldn't ignore the implications of his story, no matter how far-fetched it seemed. The mountain, with its eerie sounds, strange symbols, and the luminous object in the night sky, had revealed its enigmatic power in the most terrifying way. Their conversation was interrupted by an unexpected presence in the bar. The man who had delivered the cryptic warning on the mountain, the same enigmatic figure with the peculiar devices and the ominous scar on his temple, had returned. He approached their table, his piercing gaze fixed on Jack, as if recognizing him. The man's demeanor was a curious mix of authority and mystery, and he wasted no time in addressing the climbers. "I see you've encountered the mountain's secrets," the man said, his voice heavy with implication. Mike, Sarah, and Jack were left speechless by his sudden reappearance. Jack's story had shaken their understanding of reality, and now the return of the enigmatic man added another layer to the mystery that surrounded Mount Shasta. "Who are you?" Mike finally asked, his voice edged with suspicion. "What do you know about what's happening up there?" The man's gaze seemed to penetrate their very souls as he leaned in, his words laden with cryptic meaning. "The mountain holds ancient secrets, secrets that predate human civilization. It is a place of power and transformation, but it is also a place of danger. Those who seek its mysteries may find more than they bargained for." Sarah, her fear mingled with determination, demanded answers. "What are these secrets? What happened to Jack on the mountain?" The man's response was enigmatic, as if he held the key to a puzzle they could not solve. "The mountain's secrets are not easily understood and not easily shared, but it is a place of convergence, where the boundaries between our world and others become thin. You have experienced a glimpse of what lies beyond." Their encounter with the enigmatic man left the climbers with more questions than answers. The mountain's mysteries had deepened, and the truth seemed to elude their grasp. The man's warning, his return, and Jack's revelation had woven a web of uncertainty that enveloped them in its chilling embrace. As they left the bar that night, the mountain's power continued to haunt their thoughts. The climbers were left to ponder the enigma of Mount Shasta, a place where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blurred, and where ancient secrets remained concealed in the shadow of its towering peaks. Their journey had led them into a world of terror, mystery, and the unknown, a world where the answers remained elusive, and the mountain's secrets continued to cast their malevolent spell. As they stood at the crossroads of the extraordinary and the inexplicable, they knew that their adventure had only just begun, and the enigma of Mount Shasta would continue to haunt their dreams and their reality.